Wow, hard to believe that. All right, Brian, stand by for a second. I want to bring in our panel, who everybody here has been following this case from the very start. We have Sara Azari, News Nation legal contributor and criminal defense attorney; Lauren Matthias, host of Hidden, a true crime podcast and YouTube channel; and Francie Hakes, former federal prosecutor and the first national coordinator for the child exploitation prevention and interdiction. Sara, was it a mistake for Lori's attorneys not to put on a defense of any kind, not to call a single witness?
So, look, the burden's entirely on the prosecution, and the defense doesn't have to put on a case. But sometimes you do, and in this case, they didn't really do an adequate job in cross-examination to then just sort of rest and go away. And they didn't do enough, and I believe, like Brian said, a lot of it had to do with her controlling her defense. But I don't think they did enough to throw Chad under the bus. You know, this was really, I think, the guilty verdict specifically, because it was not just conspiracy, but also the murder, the first-degree murder, has to do with this jury believing two things from the prosecution's case. One is that these outlandish prophecies were a justification of the deaths, which she admitted to her son on the jail call. And the second one was the idea that essentially she commanded, not just conspired, but actually aided and abetted.
She didn't just go along with this thing.
No,
she was, according to the prosecution, they called her the master manipulator in their closing arguments. They said she's the one who came up with the plan.
Well, she was also carrying the mantle. She was trying to solicit other people into this cult. So, you know, I think the defense should have disconnected her, at least from Tammy. You know, I mean, Tammy was forget dots. There were no dots with Tammy, you know, for the jury to connect. They threw the book at her. And so I do wonder why they didn't at least, I understand she might care about Chad and be brainwashed, but why not, you know, disconnect her from Tammy's death?
Well, clearly they buy the fact that she manipulated the whole thing. Sara, what are the grounds, if any? I mean, it's pretty standard in these cases that appeals are filed. What could she say in terms of an appeal?
I mean, I hate to say she doesn't really have many grounds, because, you know, usually it's about admitting evidence that was more prejudicial than probative or something. But all that stuff that came in from Arizona was actually on point. You know, it's the same exact charges that she faces, except the victim is her husband, who she also wanted dead. You know, so, I mean, you know, money, all that applied to him as well. So, you know, and in Arizona, she's facing the death penalty. So this, these convictions today, I think, is going to prompt a couple of plea agreements. One for her in Arizona, because it is a death penalty state, and one for Chad, whose attorney was in the courtroom yesterday, and like I would be if it was a co-defendant case, and I'd be like, well, maybe we should talk about not going to trial and get rid of the death penalty.
Right. All right. Francie, Sara, Lauren, and Brian, thank you all so very much for your analysis, not just tonight, but throughout this trial. We really appreciate it. Coming up.